Good morning and almost afternoon to everyone. Delighted to welcome you to this webinar hosted by Shannon Chambers Skillnet. My name is Tommy Geary and wanted to talk to you today a little bit about career development and owning your career plan. And so we'll take about maybe 35 minutes to go through some slides and would love to hear questions from you. We'll leave plenty of time at the end for those. If you just want to slot those into the chat box at the bottom there, you can click and do that throughout the session. So hopefully some of this will help whatever stage you're at in your career, whether that's you're looking for a new job or you're looking for that promotion or you just want to develop new skills. We should be able to cover some of those elements for you today. A little bit of background about me, primarily based in operations, global and European experience. And my background is really as an engineer and very much a process type person. I worked primarily with Hewlett Packard and Dell for most of my career, but I also worked in air. And I had the pleasure of working abroad for some of those companies in the US for a number of years, and Netherlands, and then Ireland, of course. My most recent role was as Senior Vice President of Sales Operations for Hewlett Packard Enterprise. And at its peak, the team was about 5,000 people, and that was spread across the world. So I recently achieved my long-term goal, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes, of being able to retire at 50. And I'm not sure retirement might be the wrong word, but certainly taking it a little bit easier. But I did decide to set up a new company, and so co-founded Synco Coaching and Consulting earlier last year. So really looking forward to working more to help people develop themselves and develop their careers in the future. So that's a little bit about me, and you'll see there's a website link at the end if you want to know more. What we would like to do to kick this off really is to start with a quick poll, and Helen's going to walk us through this. We'll just ask you 3 simple questions, and if your answer is no to all of these, you're definitely in the right place. If you answer yes, hopefully you'll get something out of today's session as well. So if you could just take the opportunity to just answer yes or no to those questions, that would be really great. Thanks. I'll give you a few seconds to do that. Okay, some of you are still responding, but looks like we have most of the group here. So interesting that 40% of the group have goals that are written down. That's really fantastic. Great start, everyone. I know many of you probably have some in your head, and that's okay too. Writing them down is just taking it to that next level and kind of almost committing to them. Do you have a development plan to improve yourself? About a third of you have, which is interesting as well. You may have the goals, but you may not have a plan written out of how you're going to achieve the goals. So a little bit like understanding your destination, but not quite sure how you're going to get there. So we'll talk about how you can create a development plan today. And then thirdly, do you have the support? And that could be from your manager, it could be from your husband or wife, it could be other people just around you. And again, more than half of you feel you have that support today. So I think these are 3 elements that you will need to have to be successful, but not difficult to do in any way, shape or form. So big thanks for doing the poll there. It gives a good flavor of how we want to focus today. Okay, so just moving on to the next slide, I want to start with goals. For me, this is something that I think is really, really important. It's again, defining the destination on your journey. Just imagine you sat into your car and you set off. Where are you going? You're not going to drive around aimlessly. You have to have a destination to think about. And it's the same with your career. And what I would say to you is imagine you doing the same journey, but in an electric car, where you have, all of a sudden, you have fear about how far you can go in that car, range anxiety. So all of a sudden you start to think about that journey a little bit differently and that destination. And you probably start to think about what happens if I run out of charge? What am I going to do? What's my backup plan? And you should think about your career in the same way. You only have a certain amount of time to achieve your goals. and you have lots of other things going on, other competing priorities. So setting out these goals, I think, is really, really important, and it has to fit in with the rest of your life. And that's why I think it's really important to do personal and professional goals. And so I suggest you use a very, very simple template. I would personally write down more than 5, but it's great to prioritize the top ones. And they can be really simple or really complex or really difficult. So personal goals could be, I want to take my kids to Disneyland. I want to teach my son to ride a bike. But it also could be, I want to pay off my mortgage by the time I'm 60, so they can be big and small. The same with professional goals. Are they particular skills that you want to achieve? Are they promotions you want to get? What are they? And again, it can be multiple. I want to achieve this job in the next 2 years, but my ultimate aim is this particular role or this level or this company in 10 years time. What I encourage you to do is, if it's within the 12-month period, put down a month as your timeline. So that would be the completion date. And if it's beyond the 12 months, you can put down a year. And, I always found it's actually okay to give yourself a little bit of leniency on that timeline, because you get a great kick out of overachieving and doing it even sooner. So don't kill yourself with a ridiculous timeline, but do use smart, objectives here. So you might have heard of those before: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. That's just a really good format for how you can clearly write a goal in an action-oriented sentence with a very clear timeline. And this is something you can keep an eye on over the period of time and put down your status. And the status can be simply not started, is it on track, off track, or is it complete? Really, really simple template. Anyone can do it. But I do encourage you just to think about how your personal goals and your professional goals need to match up. So as an example, if you said, I want to be a director in a certain company, and for example, that the chances of you getting there are really slim unless you move country. But personally, you realize your family are going nowhere. They do not want to move. You don't really want to move. Therefore, there's a mismatch between the personal and the professional. So really important that some of this is done with your family, or certainly with your partner, to get a combined set of goals that complement each other. So you have a much greater chance of getting there if you can get those realistic goals. Stretch yourself for sure, but just think about how they complement each other. Okay, just on the next slide, I just want to talk to you about the next stage, which is really the starting point. We talked about goals being your destination. Well, where are you starting from? And this is a really simple tool. 5 circles, 8 elements around the circles. You can replace these elements with whatever you want to put in those black boxes. I thought about this from a career perspective, and I picked 8 elements that kind of were meaningful for me. And so if you were to take an example of goals, what are they? Have I set down written goals, and I score it from 0 to 5. So if I have some goals in my head, but they're not really well thought out, haven't really done this before, I might score myself a 1. If I have goals that are written with timelines, it's very clear, I've managed them diligently, they might be a 5 score, right? And you do this all around the box here. I'll explain in a second what's the difference between skills, competencies, and experiences. But these are all elements or gaps maybe you have in getting from your starting point to your destination. Personal brand is important. What do you stand for? What do people know you as? If you were to ask someone, hey, tell me back what I am to you, or when you see me, what do you see? That's all your personal brand, and that's something I found really, really important. An action plan. So it's okay having goals, but like we saw in the poll, if you don't have an action plan, it's not going to really happen. And then if you don't have support of others, your chances of succeeding reduce significantly. So this is all about setting goals, but also giving yourself the greatest chance to achieve those goals, finding ways and actions to make the odds of you getting to that goal slimmer and slimmer, but also taking away risks and obstacles again. So you're eliminating risks and obstacles, and you're taking actions to optimize your chances of getting to the goal. So just consider that as 2 ends of the spectrum that are really, really important. It will give you a much greater chance of actually achieving what you set out to do. And for me, execution is important. You can do all these other elements. If you don't execute, it's a little bit like setting New Year's resolutions and within 2 days, you've forgotten about them. it's just not going to happen. So wishing this to happen, I'd love to tell you a different answer. It's going to take a bit of work. And again, this kind of grid and this exercise with the wheel tool is useful, because if you realize that your execution skills aren't that strong, maybe that's an area of focus for you to improve on. So this kind of gives you a way to prioritize. So how it works, you basically score each of these 8 elements and you place a dot in the circle that's relevant to you. So in this case, goals might be a score of 1, competencies might be a score of 4, right? So you get a spider's web type of view. And then what you do is you plan out where would you like to be in 12 months. And it can be any period of time you want, but say 12 months, where would you like these elements to be? And in certain cases, you might not want to improve the element at all. In certain cases, you might want to make a big improvement. So you can see the darker blue dots there, and you start to see visually where there are gaps. Now, it's clear here, you can see low scores and you can see high scores and you can see gaps. So for example, goals, I want to go from a 1 to a 5. That could be relatively easy to achieve by just doing the goal setting template we showed earlier. So that might be an easy thing to do. But say, for example, going from a 3 to a 4 on execution, that could be really difficult. So not all the scores are equal. And also these categories aren't equal. You might feel when you look at this, you know, if I was only to do one thing, I need a particular skill set in order for me to achieve a certain goal. You know, I don't have coding skills. I'm going nowhere in that world unless I have coding skills. So even though you might feel I'm only going to jump up from a 1 to a 2 in my coding skills, but that's really, really important for me. So you got to think about criticality of each of these elements and not just the base score. But it should give you a really great way to identify kind of areas that you want to improve, you need to improve, and what your priorities are. And this all feeds into your plan. At the end of the day, what we're trying to do is narrow down to do the least number of items that will give you the biggest bang for your buck. We don't want you to have 100 actions and not be able to complete them. Narrow it down to the real core elements that will work for you. So just to share a little bit about skills versus competencies versus experiences. So skills will be things that you will need to learn to do a job. As I mentioned, it could be coding, it could be web development, it could be learning a foreign language, it could be learning accounting. And usually these are things that you would do through training, but you can do self-study or reading or whatever. You can also improve the skills you have in these areas today. So think of these as kind of hard skills. The second area is competencies. And this is really kind of knowledge or behavior. And these are often in you as an individual, in your DNA. They could be things like leadership. Are you a natural leader? Are you adaptable? Do you collaborate? These kind of elements, sometimes people call them softer skills. And they can be tricky to develop, but they're absolutely, there's absolutely ways to develop it. Often it's through coaching, mentoring, feedback loops. There's definitely ways to evolve these. And these can be very, very important, especially as you want to navigate either the corporate world or the business world. It can be tricky. These are elements that, that you will want to make sure that you're strong in the ones that are most important. And then finally, experiences. So this is exposure to something maybe new. Let's say, for example, you wanted to start your own company. You'd never done it before, but you have a passion for, I don't know, selling beer, right? It can be anything. And you've worked all your life in a corporate world. Well, maybe you say, you know what, I've never worked for myself and I've never had my own company. Maybe what I should do as an interim step is to get the experience of working in a startup under someone else's leadership who's maybe done this before. Go there, spend a year or two, learn how it's done, learn all the difficulties of a small business, and then go out on your own. So that's just an example of an experience, but it could be working in a different country, it could be job rotation, whatever. And some of these you can get within your current job just by expanding the role. It could be signing up for new projects, whatever. These are experiences that you can gain, but are very, very important. So think about, as you consider the gaps you have from start point to destination, what are the gaps you have? What are the most important ones you want to go fix? How are you going to fix them? And this is an approach that I'm sure many of you have seen before, but I just wanted to share it because I think when people think about, okay, I've got some gaps, I want to fix them, I want to improve, I'll go on a training course. That's almost the immediate gut reaction. I need to do lots of training. But actually, when you consider this, that should only really be probably be about 10% of your plan here. There's also ways you can get there with activities that are around you mightn't even realize. So 20% could be through others. That could be communities of learning. Again, if there's people who are really into coding, do they have little meetup groups that you could join and you could learn? And again, this is fantastic when you have people who are maybe ahead of you on the journey. You can learn from them and they're very, very willing to share. Also, coaching and mentoring can be a very, very useful way to get and accelerate skills, particularly when you're thinking about competencies and learning more about yourself and improving. And the third element is on the job. So many opportunities in your current job or even in your environment around you to learn from others. Learn by shadowing someone. Learn by taking on an extra project or an assignment. Networking. You might have a role today and you're saying, how can I do that on the job? Think about networking with people who are in those types of jobs that you want to get. I guarantee you, when you reach out to someone who you've never met before and just ask them for 10 minutes, 15 minutes so that you can learn from them and get some advice, I don't think I've ever come across anyone who said no. So don't be afraid to network. It is just such a fantastic free tool out there for you. And the more you do it, the easier it gets, I guarantee you. And when you do it and you talk to someone, they'll give you a name of the next person. And you do that every few days. You'd be amazed how your network builds up, your knowledge builds up, and again, you can start to close these gaps. And they will generate those opportunities for you. Again, we talked about how do you improve your odds, improve your chances of getting to your goal. That's one way of doing it. Build your contacts, build your network. And then how do you reduce those risks and obstacles? Maybe those people will tell you, hey, watch out for this, this, and this. These are the mistakes I made. You need not make those mistakes. So again, you're reducing those obstacles, reducing those risks. All of that leads to a better chance of you achieving your plan without having to have the pain of others. I just wanted to highlight as well, Shannon Chambers SkillNet have a lot of courses out there that you should take a look at. They're very, very varied. There's the link here I've shown for the website and just a flavor of some of what's available there. Some of this is very, very new to me, and I was just blown away by the amount of knowledge that's available to gain, sometimes for free, often for a very, very low cost. And it's wide varied from coaching to lean white belt training to time management to sales skills. So lots of different activities there that you could build into your plan. And again, it's pretty simple, and these are all running all of the time. So I encourage you to go have a look at that website. So now that we've got to a point where we're starting to think about understanding ourselves, understanding our gaps and what's important, so we've defined our destination, we're starting to understand what the journey will look like. That's really important then to feed into this action plan. I've given you an example of what an action plan might look like. This can be as simple or as complex as you want it to be. You can add your own columns here, whatever works for you. But this is a way of prioritizing what you think is most important and really holding yourself accountable to execute on it. So let's say someone had the goal of, I want to change my career direction. I'm in operations today and I want to move into sales, and I want to do that within the next 12 months. So that might be their goal. So they're identifying through these different techniques I showed earlier what their gaps are. And one of them might be, look, I just don't know how to sell. I'm a good person. I've got all these other aspects I think that will help me in the role, but I don't have good selling techniques. What am I going to do? So that might be one of the development areas you identify is improve my selling techniques. So the action could be to attend an online training course. Let's make a start. That might be the first action. How do you know you're good enough when you got there? How do you know when you've got there? Well, you'll feel much more comfortable applying for roles. You will actually start to be considered for roles. People won't just look at your CV and throw it to the side. You'll start to get maybe interviews. So you'll start to see this thing is working. Obstacles for yourself. Is cost an issue? Is time an issue? Is there something else an issue? Identify that and think about what you can do to work around those obstacles. As I mentioned, there are some free courses out there. There are people out there who will help you for nothing. So if cost is a challenge, money is a challenge, there are ways to get there. You just maybe need to be a bit more creative. Then you set some target completion dates. And I like to be as specific as possible on these. So it could be, I want to do the first training by February. I want to have a series of training completed by June. I want to be able to be ready to apply for those roles in July, so that within that 12-month period, I'm giving myself a chance to apply for roles, to interview, maybe to not get the first few jobs, to learn and evolve, keep my training going, keep my learning going. And eventually by the end of the year, I feel I'm in a so much better position to land that job. Progress to date, this can be something you keep updated with. What have you done so far? So for example, this person might have signed up for that course I showed you earlier, the Sales Skills, the Art of Selling, with Shannon Chambers SkillNet. And there's actually a series of trainings and they're free as far as I understand. So that could be a particular set of actions you want to take. And again, think about the 10, 20, 70. What other things do you do that would be outside maybe training to improve those selling skills? So this is a basic action plan. You might take then another development area and think about what you're going to do to improve. You will not get everything done that you would like to do. So I would say less is more. Prioritize maybe 3, maybe 5, and go execute on those and then pick the next 3 or 5. The ideal thing with, you know, that self-assessment and that learning is trying to think about what will make the biggest difference with your time. Think back to that electric car getting to the destination. You've got to be very aware of that range anxiety. You have range anxiety with your career. You only have so much time capacity to get it done. So you've got to think very carefully. You know, it might be measure twice, cut once. You want to think through this, and it won't take that long. But once you think about all these dots that you want to join up, you will find that there are 3 or 4 things jumping out at you that say, like, I've got to do that first. That's going to make the biggest difference. So let me get started with that. And that's really how you will prioritize. You'll know yourself, and as you get into this, you'll learn what's working and what's not working for you. But be realistic, and you know, you get great momentum out of ticking off things you've done. So start small and build it up if you need to. So I want to pause there, and we've gone through the slides pretty quickly, but we've got quite a lot of attendees here. So I hope that you can engage in this topic. Just give me some feedback. I'd love to hear some questions from you, and we'll be delighted to answer anything and share my own perspectives as well. So Helen, I think, is going to help us coordinate the questions that we have.
And we don't have many questions in the chat room just now, but we do have one that I'm going to kick it off with. And it went back to one of your slides about networking, Tommy. How do you improve your networking?
So I think networking is something that is a bad word for a lot of people. I think they consider networking sometimes to be, you know, that thing that people do who want to be liked by the senior people around the organization. And they kind of look down on it and say, look, if I just work hard, I'll get that promotion. I'll get where I want to get to. I wouldn't look at it negatively at all. I think networking is fantastic to meet other people. It could be peers of yours. It could be people that are in areas that you might be interested in. It could be senior people that you want to learn from. How do you network? It's, first of all, having the courage to go do it. I can remember coaching someone and they were struggling to get promoted. And it was clear that what was happening was that some of the senior folks that were the decision makers didn't know this person. And it was difficult for this person. It wasn't their natural inclination to go network. But every time that promotion didn't happen, their perspective was, I need to just work harder. And so their 10-hour days became 12-hour days, became 14-hour days. The promotion still didn't come. What they needed to do was influence those decision makers. And so that can be daunting. What I would say to you is try and create a short list, first of all. Maybe there's 5 names on that short list of people that you want to get to know. And then I would reach out to them, find a way. It could be through a friend, it could be through sending them an email. And again, just simply asking them for that 10 or 15 minutes to just ask them some questions, get some advice. When you get into that networking session, have some prep done beforehand. What are you going to ask them? It's your job to control that meeting. And what I've found is, particularly with senior people, is they all have an ego, right? So they will all like to talk about themselves. They will like to talk about their achievements, and they will feel really good doing that. And they will feel good about you when they do that. So tee up some very, very simple questions. Could you tell me about your career? I've really admired you from afar. What do you believe is the biggest obstacle you've overcome? Tee up those questions that are pretty simple for them. They will do most of the talking, and that's just fine. And what, again, they will do is they will think highly of you for taking the time, but also listening to them. And so when they go off into a meeting and they're asked about you, they will immediately have positive, good vibes. And so it might start with that first meeting for 10 or 15 minutes, and then you might ask them, hey, would you mind if I check in with you again in a month or two? You might ask them, is there someone else you'd recommend that I speak to? And you'll probably get a chance to talk a little bit about what are your goals in that session? What would you really like to do? And ideally, you keep something that's relevant to them. So if you've identified this person on your short list of 5, then they must be meaningful for you and your career. So what is it you want to get across to them by the end of the networking session that's a need or something important to you? So make sure you're leaving them with a thought about what you need and what help you might desire. And again, you look at, how can I do a follow-up with this person? Then you go on to the next person on your list. Sometimes they'll also give you a name and say, look, you should meet Mary, you should meet John. And that's a great way of, again, expanding your network. What I found with networking is, it does take effort to make the first move. It doesn't take much time. This could mean if those 5 meetings take 10 minutes each, if they even take 20 minutes each, you're talking about a couple of hours. It's not significant in your time. So this is more about you getting over the mental stumbling block of, why would they want to talk to me? I need to have a topic that's really important that they care about. None of that matters. They'll actually be happy to talk to you, share advice, especially if it's for short periods of time. And over time, as you do this, you'll find that network coming back to meet you in so many different ways. People that you may be engaged with in a company, all of a sudden they're popping up in other different companies, and you happen to bump into them at a meeting at a later stage, or they happen to be on the same training course as you, whatever it might be. It's amazing as you do this over time, how that network comes back to help you. And not only will it help you career-wise, but you'll probably make some really good friends along the way. And so I encourage you to start small, but do start. It's really, really important. And I would think, for me, it's one of the top 3 or 4 reasons why people's careers don't move forward. They don't invest in networking, and they find reasons not to do it. So don't be that person. Do start your network today. You can never start early enough, and it will take a while to build it up fully, but I guarantee you'll come across some fantastic people, and you'll be able to help them along the way as much as they help you. It's one of those tit for tat. So thanks for the question.
Yeah, and a great response as well, Tommy. And how challenging is it now to have to network when we're all doing it virtually? So that's added a new dilemma or new challenge, but an interesting challenge. Look, we've 60 plus people networking here virtually, but
Yeah.
We have another question. And it's about how do you identify one thing you could do to ensure that you retire at 50? And what would that be? It's a great question, I think.
That is a great question. I suppose, first of all, setting the target to do it. And then you step back and you go, oh my God, how would I do that? What would I need? And in some cases, it's monetary. So it might be a number that you need to hit. And in some cases, it might be something different. But for me, I guess the money part was important, that I needed to be able to provide for my family and to get to a position where I could do that. And so it went back to goal setting for me. That's where I started to change the game. I think in the early part of my career, I think I would have said I had an accidental career. Opportunities happened for me. Things went well. I got the odd promotion. Wasn't sure how it happened. If you said to me, God, in 3 years' time, do you think you'll be doing this? Or when you look backwards 3 years, did you ever think you'd be here? The answer was no, because I had kind of no control over it. When I started setting goals, I was able to say, okay, if I want to be able to retire at 50, I probably need to be doing this level of position. That might have been a VP role. and I need to be able to hit this number, and I need to be able to pay off my mortgage, and I need to be able to do these different things. And they all seemed very, very daunting at the start. But I knew then what it took. I knew clearly what I had to do. And so it kind of made it easier when you think about, for example, I need to pay off my mortgage. Then if I ever got a bonus, I would say, okay, I'm going to put that bonus or half of that bonus into shrinking my mortgage down. And I felt really good about it, going, that's one step closer to retiring at 50. And so you think about the small steps you can take to deliver on the bigger steps. But for me, it's that kind of goal setting, and for it to be realistic, for you to maybe make some calculated risks, you need to understand what willingness you have for that level of risk. You don't want to go off to Vegas and throw it all on red. What willingness do you have to take some risks, but also, again, reduce that risk wherever you can? So building a plan is probably the best way to get to that, and you will have ups and downs on the journey, and maybe you'll have to increase that to 53 or 54. But I guarantee you, without a plan and without a vision, you'll be at 65 going, where did all those years go? So I hope that gives you a little bit of insight. Happy to, if there's other questions on the back of that, happy to expand a little bit more. But for me, setting those goals, having the plan, and then taking little bite-sized chunks from the elephant rather than eating it all at once was how it was achieved.
Excellent. Thank you for that again, Tommy. Another question: if somebody's trying to get into the public sector and networking isn't a possibility, how do you potentially break into the public sector environment?
A good question. Most of my experience is in the private sector, in the corporate world. But again, I think where you talk about networking not being an opportunity, I would reach out to people, outside of work, people who have made that leap. It probably is a similar answer to anything that you feel is daunting or that you don't know how to do. There are people out there that know how to do this if you don't. And so that would be probably my answer, is go find someone. For me, you wouldn't be coming to me asking that question, I think, because I'm not an expert in the public sector. But I guarantee you there are people that are. Go look them up on LinkedIn. Go search on Google and find out who might have done a presentation on something or other about public sector. Go find out about how the promotion process works, how the application process works. Go do your research, and then go reach out to some people and just start asking questions and start building up your knowledge base. And you'd be amazed what you will find from people who are in the know, if you like. They might say, well, look, if you go up on the website, you'll see here's the process, how you do it. But to be honest, thousands of people will go that route. If I connect you with this person over here, they will short circuit the process for you, and they will be able to tell you exactly, what's available, how you go about doing it, what are the skills needed. By the way, you don't have this, you need that. Go get that first, then come back to me. So for me, I kind of look at this as a challenge of something I've no clue about. How do I go about achieving it? Well, it's research, it's reach out to others, it's take actions to put yourself in a better place to narrow the odds of you getting that job, and then execute on it. Pursue it, be hard on yourself, be accountable to yourself, and go for it. So sorry if that's a bit of a generic answer, but it's probably the best I can do for that specific one, and encourage you to find people who know exactly that answer. They're out there.
And Tommy, just to add to that, I would say contact, there are people in the local authorities, in the agencies like Enterprise Ireland, IDA, and the LEOs, your local TD. They're all avenues in, whether they're directly giving you access or indirectly. But just to answer that question on behalf of that gentleman. Another question: does Tommy think that learning via communities of practice is more beneficial than learning via formal methods?
To me, I look at them as just different opportunities, and there are different formal educations that you can do that are really fantastic. There are others that aren't great quality, and that you might feel, well, that wasn't worth my time. The same goes for probably the communities. So I think you're looking for high quality, and again, maybe it's trying it out. If you're unsure, look to people who maybe have done that training before and tried to get some reviews, or you can even research online and see what the reviews are like for particular training courses that you're thinking of. For me, it's probably a bit of a combination of multiple things. If you have a particular skill that you want to develop, or a gap that we spoke about, you probably won't be able to do just one thing to fix that problem. You will probably have to do multiple. And so the formal training might be a great first step. The community might be a way to build on that training and be engaging with people who are further along that journey. They may be people who are very, very happy to give back, and they're sharing openly again about how to achieve in that particular space. Again, it could be reading different materials. It could be just chatting to a friend who's thinking about the same thing, brainstorming together how you're going to get started. So I don't think it's one or the other, but I generally would say research. Go back to thinking about that electric car with the range anxiety. Before you commit yourself to a year training course, go do your research. You want that year to count. Before you commit to anything, do the research so that when you get in there, you're dealing with a kind of a quality product. And you don't turn around in a year's time going, I did a whole bunch of things, I was hard on myself, I pushed myself, but they weren't really that beneficial. That's the last thing you want. So again, do your research, throw yourself into it, and go help others who are coming behind you. And that will pay you back many times over. So multiple different avenues to get to the destination is probably the best way.
Thanks, Tommy, again. Any tips on how to strengthen the execution or accountability piece? Would you recommend accountability partners or pods?
Yeah, I think this is really important. I think, first of all, having a self-awareness about how good you are to stick with something. I mean, we've all had this, let's say New Year's resolution. I want to lose, a stone in weight. I want to lose my coronavirus stone, whatever it is, you know how good you are based on some of those things in the past. So be aware of your capability. You might be an execution animal. Great. There's other things maybe you need to focus your time on. You might be a brilliant planner, but not a great executor. So do focus on that weak area. For me, it was always structure. That was my friend. And so if I was going to write down an action plan, I was going to try and be specific with it and give myself the time to ensure that would happen. And secondly, make sure I have a check-in. So for me, discipline and structure worked. It kind of dragged me over the line. But what also worked was that kind of carrot of, let me have some easy layup, easy actions that I can gain momentum from and gain a bit of a buzz from, hey, I'm making progress here. That was important to me. So understanding yourself, I think, is really vital, what works for you. Networking as an example. Let me show you how you would do a structure of networking. So that I want to get a promotion in a particular company. That there are 5 decision makers. Their names, or at least you can find them out. Your objective is to network with those 5 people and make sure they not only know you, but they rate you highly. That might be your goal. How do you go execute on that? So the first thing you might do is build a little template for yourself and say, what are the names? Now I'm going to score them out of 10 for how well they know me. Okay, so a 0 is they've no idea who I am. A 10 is they know me very well. They were at my wife's birthday. So that's fine. They know you or they don't know you. Next column is how highly do they rate you? So they might know you really well, but they might think you're an idiot. They might think you're fantastic. You be very self-aware of what that score is. And then set yourself a target. So of these 5 people, 2 of them I know a level 5, 3 of them I know a level 0. What do they think of me? Again, score it, and then set yourself a target. Where do I want to be in 6 months with these people? I know that promotion cycle that I missed is coming around again in 12 months' time. I want to be in a different place with these people in 6-9 months' time. How am I going to do it? So that structure tells you exactly where you're starting from. And I would then kind of literally say to yourself, I'm going to do these networking meetings. How long is it going to take? I'm going to set out time in my calendar to make that happen. going to reach out to them to do the email. So you might say, put a half an hour on my calendar on a Friday afternoon when nothing else is going on, I'm going to send 5 emails off to these guys. I've got a networking meeting, great. I'm going to slot that in, half an hour on my calendar, whatever it takes, right? So for me, structure was what worked. For others, that might not work. You may be someone who just wants to hold this in your head and just make it happen. But if you're not executing and it's not working, you need to try something else. So if you aren't a great executor and structure isn't the thing you like, you may need to bring some of that in, because it will change the game for you. You can't keep doing the same thing expecting a different result. So for me, the execution was all about a little bit of structure. Don't overdo it, but something that you have on paper you can look at and you can hold yourself accountable. You can look yourself in the mirror and say, did I really give my best effort to that? And if you have, fantastic, you can do no more. But the mirror is your friend. Keep yourself honest with, am I doing enough, or am I just wishing it to happen?
Thank you, Tommy. Another question, and a comment. I've had many different roles and jobs over the years. I'm not getting interviews. Is there a checklist you would recommend for when looking at jobs or tailoring a CV? Networking is great. As a musician, it was integral to reach my musical goals.
Yeah, so if I understand it properly, are you being considered for those kind of roles or those opportunities? Networking is fine, but how do you make sure you're giving yourself the best chance? So I think for me, understanding what it is the other person is looking for. So let me give you an example. In an interview process, when I was going through the first round of interviews, I would say at the end, I would have a question at the end that said, Mr. Interviewer, Mrs. Interviewer, in 12 months' time, what would the person who got this role be doing that would make you delighted with having hired them? What kind of achievements would they have delivered on? Okay, so you're asking them for the answer to the exam. And I found at the end of interview 1, I knew now exactly what was important to them and what I needed to do to achieve. And so I go into interview 2, I've got a great head start on knowing exactly what these guys are looking for and looking at my skills and sharing about how I can bring that to the table. So if they said, oh, we want to implement this big IT system, I would be bringing to the next interview, here's all the work I've done on introducing IT systems and my success stories. I go and ask the same question at the end of interview 2. Now I have further information. I go to interview 3. I practically know more about what they're looking for than they do themselves after interview 3 or 4. So I'm able to then mold my answers, mold my experience into what it is they're looking for. So I would think about that for every element of trying to apply for something that you really, really want. How do you understand what it is they're looking for? And how do you position yourself to show them that you're the person that has those skills or competencies or knowledge? I'm not asking you to lie about your capabilities. I'm asking you to understand what's in your capability library that you want to pull out and showcase to those people. So think about it in that way. If you were able to showcase those best parts that you know are very, very important to them, versus you just showing up and showcasing yourself without knowing any of that information, which individual is going to get that job are going to get that opportunity? I guarantee it'll be the previous one, the person who has understood what they really want and has showcased their expertise and their skill set and what they can bring to the table. So there's some small tips I found, and in fact, that interview example, you get to the end of the interview process, and at this stage, having met several people, you know a huge amount about what they're looking for, and you've pitched yourself in such a way in 30-minute, 60-minute meetings that they think you're a great person. All they've heard is your great skills and experience that you're bringing to the table. They don't know any of the bad bits. They look internally, all they see are the bad bits. They know all those people so well. They know when they're late for meetings. They know they screwed up as part of a certain project. They know all these different things about them. And so they're more inclined to look on that external candidate more favorably. And that is why often internally, when you're in the position wanting to be promoted and they hire someone in from outside and you go, how the hell did that happen? I have all these skills. Why didn't it happen for me? So that's what you're up against. And so if you're internally looking for this opportunity, you've got to kind of do something similar to what the external person has. You've got to find out who are the decision makers, what's important to them, and how can I show myself in my best light to those people. Sometimes even tougher internally. Sometimes you'll get the benefit of having that loyalty and that relationship. But hopefully that explains maybe how you can optimize your chances of getting that opportunity using what you already have, but it's showcasing that and understanding the needs.
Great, Tommy. And another question. Do you feel interview coaching is beneficial to help you become successful in job interviews?
I think it can be. Depends on what stage you're at. Are you a great interviewer and that's not where you need to work? If that's not your priority, no need. It may be something else. And that's why looking at the self-assessment, understanding where your gaps are and focusing on that. So for someone who maybe hasn't done an interview in 20 years and is a little bit nervous and maybe a little bit of an introvert, then it could help. And as I just described to you, that was one technique I just mentioned about how you ask a clever question at the end. It can be useful for some people. I think it can, for me, certainly I found that having some techniques to help me ended up that I prepared well for the interview. And knowing I was prepared well meant that I was less nervous going into the interview and therefore did a better interview. So for some people, it will work and it could be the game changer. For other people, it's something else that's important. So weigh it up, look yourself in the mirror and say, score yourself out of 10, whatever it takes. How comfortable am I doing an interview tomorrow? And how well do I think I'll score in that interview? I'm looking for a 10 out of 10 when I leave that room. Am I positioned to get that 10 out of 10? Getting an interview is tough these days. Very, very difficult environment out there, made worse by COVID. How do I make sure that this interview is going to be one that I'm the best candidate? And if you feel you're not there, then maybe you need to get some help. And also in this current climate, it might be, I'm great at face-to-face interviews, but I don't seem to come across well virtually. So there's a problem, right? So because all of the interviews are going to be done virtually these days. So that may be where you need a little bit of help. And it doesn't have to be coaching. It could be a mentor. It could be, again, someone who you think, oh, my wife's friend's husband's wife's dog, it doesn't matter who, someone that you can reach out to and say, look, I think they have a bit of experience. I'd love if they'd share a few minutes of that with me. Generally, people will do that for free. You can obviously go down the more structured approach if you feel you need a bit more work. But I would certainly self-assess and see, are you in a position to do a blow-away interview or not? And that will answer the question for you.
Great. Thanks again. Identifying what it is you want can be very difficult, even though it's the starting point. Any tips on how to pin that one down?
Yeah, that is probably the most common thing when I speak to people. And I've mentored a lot of people and coached people over the years. And that's probably the single biggest thing when I speak to them about what they want. They're not sure. They're really not sure. And so I think it doesn't happen overnight. It can take some time to evolve it. But what I would suggest you do is, there's many different ways. I remember I was coached by someone and they said, draw me a picture of yourself on your 60th birthday. Where are you living and who's there? And I said, first of all, well, I can't draw. And they said, of course you can draw. It doesn't matter if it looks like a 5-year-old drew it, you can draw. And I didn't feel comfortable doing that activity. But you know what? It did work. It did work because it made me think about where was the house? What did the house look like? Did I have kids? Were my parents alive? All of these different types of things that I'd never been able to really consider before. It was a great way of just unlocking myself. And so that can sometimes work for people. Others, particularly people who are maybe in their 20s, they'll find it really, really hard to go that far out. So maybe think 5 years out. What might my world look like? it could be a thing of, and I do this sometimes with goal setting, is I'll ask people, what are the most important things to you in the world? What do you think the most important things in the world will be to you in 10 years' time? And you might find that starts to change. I know for me, you're kind of a little bit insular, maybe a little bit selfish, arguably, when you're not married, you don't have kids, whatever, you're thinking about yourself and having fun and having a career. 10 years down the road, then all of a sudden you've small kids and a wife, and now you think of responsibilities and I've got to provide. And so what's happened in that 10 years is very, very different. So that can be difficult to fast forward to really understand. But just thinking in a time frame that maybe works for you. It could be 5 years out, it could be 10 years out. So think about, what are those things in the world that you would love to have? If you could just have won European Lotto, what would you do with all that money? What would your dreams be? Whatever unlocks certain activities for you will work. And again, you want to bring it back to a level of realism, right? You're not going to have 100 million to spend. So, but it will hopefully tease out what's important to you, what's not. Think about maybe skills you have that you're good at. Think about jobs that you've loved doing, environments that you've been happiest in. So think back into your history about what it is you're passionate about, what made you happy, and then fast forward that into a world where maybe you could do a job in that environment, or maybe that's something that you want to do post retirement. So whatever it takes to unlock, it could be the drawing, it could be just writing down ideas, it could be having a chat with your partner, it could be maybe someone who's recently retired and having a chat with them and saying, how did they go through it? Many different ways, whatever works for you, but something that unlocks. And for me, the drawing was what really, really helped. And you could do that at 50 years of age, you could do it at 70 years of age, whatever window works for you. That was really, really helpful for me.
That's great, Tommy. We'll all go home now and actually take out a box of crayons and start sketching. Thanks again.
Feel the kids' markers.
Any tips on building a rapport with a new mentor so that they can become a great advocate for you?
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. A new mentor, sometimes mentors are people who maybe are further along in their career. They have a passion for helping others. And they want the best for you. That's an ideal mentor. And so generally they don't want much in return. So that's really good. But I think, first of all, for anyone that I've mentored, and I've been mentored by others too, I think you doing the hard work is most important. You putting in the preparation and you respecting the time of that mentor, I think is really important. So if you're having a meeting with a mentor and you're saying, okay, it's this particular person, I know their level of expertise, let me think about 3 to 5 questions I'd like to ask them. And so when you come into the meeting, you get the pleasantries out of the way and you say, look, I've been thinking a lot about you. I have a few questions I'd love to ask you just to gain some insights into the knowledge and experience that you have. And then you start asking them questions. So you're kind of driving the meeting. I think that they will respect that hugely. And I think they will see you're taking their time really seriously, and they will be more inclined to do a second and a third session for you. So don't do what a lot of people do. They show up and I might say to them, or the mentor might say to them, what do you want to talk about today? And they say, oh, I'm not sure, like as if it's up to the mentor. It's not. 90% of the work is done by you, and the mentor just brings their skills, knowledge, and time. So you've got to respect that, and you've got to prepare. And I guarantee you will get so much more out of that mentor the more you prepare, and they will likely be willing to give you more time. And remember, sometimes mentors get in positions where they have influence over your career. And a mentor who has seen someone who is organized, who is a go-getter, who is prepared, who is respecting them, they will be very much more likely to recommend you or to go out of their way to do you a favor, to help connect you to a right job or right person. That mentor can be worth their weight in gold, but you've got to put in 90% of the work. That's my best advice.
Great. And I think that's a wrap from our audience, our participants, with regard to any questions, Tommy. But a piece of information that Sheila has shared with us, and it's around the whole area of training, but it was highlighting there are some great NFQ certified courses available both for full-time and part-time people through the National Springboard Initiative. And this is aimed at closing anticipated skills, the skills gap nationally. And for example, she's saying some might normally be on site in Dublin, but now they're all being held virtually, typically at a 10% of the full cost. So that's a really good piece of information
Brilliant.
to walk away with today for everybody. And I'm going to lean a little bit and just say a few words, Tommy. Number one, thank you again for joining us. I thought today's session was absolutely excellent. I do think we've walked away with some, tips on how to move forward, setting our goals, and actually maybe get more focused over the next few weeks and months. With regard to the training piece, and to follow up on the slide that you showed, Shannon Chamber is currently organising a lot of events and activities, and the Shannon Chamber Skillnet is also organising a significant amount of training to support the employed and the unemployed people. And this is funding we're getting through Skillnet Ireland. So I'd encourage everybody to take a look at the website. The training under Connect Skills is free of charge, like I've said, or Skills Connect, and it can be anything from a certificate in business and executive coaching, QQI level 6. It can be effective presentation skills, it can be a certificate in management, and so on and so forth, all free of charge, executed by very well-established trainers that we've worked with for several years. We will be putting a lot more training up on our website via our network manager, Claire Quinn, who joined us in 2020, and Liana, who organised this event today for you with Claire, will also be organising a significant amount of events with Shannon Chamber. So we'll have PwC talk about Brexit. We will have Eurocontrol, the Director General, Eamon Brennan, talking about everything to do with aviation. And we have some other events that we're currently working on at the moment. So please feel free to register for the events via our website. Thank you all for joining us today, and I hope you have a lovely weekend as we head into the back end of the week.
Thanks, everyone. All the best with your careers.